I want to throw a number at you right out of the gate today. $103,600.
That is quite the number to start with.
Right. And look, let's just skip the usual guessing game of, whether that's a down payment on a house or like some catastrophic medical bill.
Yeah, because it's actually something way more mundane than that.
Exactly. That $103,600 is a speeding ticket.
A single speeding ticket. It's just wild.
A single ticket. Specifically, a ticket handed to a Nokia executive named Anssi Van Joki back in 2002. And this was for riding his motorbike at 75 kilometers per hour in a 50 zone over in Finland.
Which, just for context, is like going 46 miles an hour in a 31 zone.
Right. I mean, he wasn't doing 100 miles an hour down a residential street.
No, it's a completely routine infraction.
Totally routine. But for that, minor mistake, he was billed over $100,000. And that staggering number, that is the entry point for our deep dive today.
It's a great entry point, too.
We are exploring this radical thought experiment from our source material today that completely dismantles our assumptions about justice and wealth and, social engineering.
Yeah, and it's all driving toward one massive kind of paradigm-shifting question.
Exactly. What if the currency of a fine wasn't money, but time?
Which forces a complete reevaluation of how we quantify consequence, right? But before we get too far into the mechanics of this, we really need to establish the parameters for today's discussion.
Yeah, that's important. Set the stage for us.
So we are entering into an open exploration today. There is no, grand unified theory of everything waiting at the end of this deep dive.
Spoiler alert, we don't have all the answers.
Right, exactly. We aren't testing a flawless policy solution that's meant to be, drafted into municipal law tomorrow morning.
Yeah, don't call your mayor just yet.
Please don't. The objective here is strictly to ask better questions about the architecture of our society, to kind of interrogate the hidden assumptions we make about punishment, and to look at the invisible friction of daily life from angles we usually just completely ignore.
I love that. The invisible friction.
Yeah, we want to leave you, the listener, turning these concepts over in your own mind completely unresolved. Because that friction, that's where the actual insight lives.
Well, let's start right there with that friction, right?
Yeah.
Because to understand why we're even considering replacing money with time, we really have to look at the catastrophic failure of how financial punishments operate right now.
Oh, absolutely. They are fundamentally broken on a structural level.
So broken.
Yeah.
Let's take Van Joki's $103,000 ticket and compare it to the standard reality in most of the world, which is, the flat fine.
The standard $200 ticket.
Right. The $200 ticket. Now, for an executive, a $200 ticket for going 15 over the limit, it isn't a punishment.
Not at all. It's barely an annoyance. It's just a mild inconvenience. But for someone else, someone living paycheck to paycheck, that exact same $200 ticket triggers an absolute avalanche.
A total downward spiral.
Yeah, you miss the ticket payment because you literally don't have the cash. So, your license gets suspended.
Which means you can't legally drive to work.
Right, but you have to work. So you drive on a suspended license to get to your warehouse job. You get pulled over again. Maybe this time you get arrested. Your car gets impounded.
Miss your shift.
You miss your shift. You lose your job. Boom. It is a rapid, brutal downward spiral.
And it all started with the exact same infraction, governed by the exact same law.
Yes. But those two offenders are basically living on two entirely different planets.
Which really exposes the central philosophical illusion of the flat fine, if you think about it.
The illusion of equality.
Exactly. We operate under this bizarre assumption that a static number equates to equal justice.
Like $200 is $200? Right. The law dictates that going 15 over the limit costs $200 universally. But a static number guarantees a highly dynamic impact.
Wow. Yeah. A static number guarantees a dynamic impact.
The physical toll of paying that money, it fluctuates wildly depending on the economic gravity of the person receiving it.
That makes total sense.
So when we rely on currency as a punitive measure, the source text points out that money fundamentally becomes either punitive or meaningless. And it depends entirely on circumstance.
Okay, but wait, let me push back on that a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
If a penalty is genuinely meaningless to the person paying it, if it doesn't cause any real friction in their life, doesn't force them to alter their budget or lose any sleep, is it even functioning as a punishment?
That is the million-dollar question.
Or have we just accidentally invented, like, a premium subscription fee for breaking the law?
A premium subscription fee is exactly what it is, and that completely breaks the mechanism of deterrence.
Because there's nothing actually deterring them.
Right. If the purpose of a justice system is to discourage dangerous behavior like, say, blasting a 2-ton machine through a residential zone at high speeds, then a flat fine just fails its core objective for the top quartile of the population.
You just don't care.
They don't. They are simply purchasing immunity. They are literally buying the right to speed.
Wow.
When a fine doesn't sting, it ceases to be justice. It just becomes a luxury tax on convenience.
That is so dark, but so true. Think about the psychological impact of that on a society.
It breeds resentment, for sure.
I mean, for you listening right now, imagine a penalty that feels absolutely devastating to your neighbor. Like, it threatens their actual housing security.
Yeah, they might not make rent.
Exactly.
Sure.
But that exact same penalty is literally pocket change to your boss, who can, just hand over a credit card to a police officer with the same emotional weight as buying a latte.
It creates a really deep systemic cynicism.
It really does.
Yeah.
So if the flat fine is mathematically guaranteed to be unequal in its impact, how do you fix it? Which I guess brings us back to Finland.
Yes. Back to Anssi Vanjoki and his $100,000 speeding ticket. Because Finland actually recognized this exact philosophical failure over a century ago.
Wait, really? A century ago?
Yeah, they've been running what is essentially a proportional punishment model since the 1920s.
Oh, wow. I had no idea it went back that far.
Yeah. It's commonly called a day fine system, and the architecture of it is designed to ensure that the sting of the penalty remains constant, even as the wealth of the offender scales up.
Okay, so break that down for us.
Oh.
How does the math actually work to generate a six-figure traffic ticket?
So it requires calculating a baseline unit of impact. The system looks at your reported daily earnings, and it roughly halves it.
Okay, so half of what you make in a day.
Right. That half day's wage becomes your personal base unit. Then the court applies a multiplier based on the severity of the infraction. So if you go slightly over the limit, it might be a multiplier of, say, 10 or 12. But if you go vastly over the limit, like Vanjoki did, that multiplier scales way up.
So you take this massive executive daily wage
Exactly.
and you multiply it by I severity factor.
And boom, that is how you arrive at six-figure traffic tickets. It is a direct mathematical attempt to force the wealthy to experience the exact same proportional economic loss as the working class.
And I mean, on paper, that sounds incredibly elegant.
It does. It feels very fair.
It totally fixes the premium subscription problem we were just talking about.
Right.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because when you actually look at the mechanics of wealth in the 21st century, there is this massive, glaring vulnerability built right into the math.
Oh, absolutely. The system has a massive blind spot.
Because the entire Finnish system hinges on one incredibly fragile concept, right?
Yeah.
Defined income.
Defined income.
And defined income, especially at the highest echelons of wealth, it's a fluid, highly malleable fiction.
You're touching on the fundamental flaw of tying justice to financial paperwork.
Right.
Because the very resources that make someone incredibly wealthy are the exact same resources that allow them to manipulate the definition of that wealth.
Yeah, you can just hire a guy to make your wealth look smaller on paper.
Precisely. If justice requires a precise calculation of income, then the wealthy simply deploy legions of tax attorneys and forensic accountants to argue their fine base down.
They don't just take a simple salary.
No, they take their compensation and deferred stock options, they route assets through offshore holding companies, they restructure their liquid capital.
So by trying to build this perfectly proportional system, all we've really done is shift the arena of justice from the street to the courtroom.
We've created a brand new game.
Yeah, a game where the primary weapon is accounting. And it's a game only the ultra-wealthy can even afford to play.
Exactly. The fluid nature of modern capital ensures that money will always find its way back in through the paperwork.
Which is so frustrating.
It is. And this raises an incredibly difficult question for us to just kind of sit with for a second. Can any financial penalty ever achieve true equality, as long as the definition of wealth itself remains subjective?
That's a great point, can it?
I mean, if the baseline metric for justice is a spreadsheet that can be legally manipulated by someone with an advanced degree, then the system is inherently compromised from the very start.
Which means, logically, we're forced to look for an alternative currency.
We have to find something else to measure.
Right. If money is fundamentally broken as a metric of justice because it can be hidden or deferred or debated by lawyers, what is the one currency that cannot be manipulated?
There is only one.
What is universally distributed with absolute unyielding equality, regardless of your tax bracket or your corporate structure or how good your accountant is?
It's time.
Time. Everyone on the planet receives exactly 24 hours in a day.
No more, no less.
You cannot purchase a 25th hour. You cannot hide Tuesday afternoon in a shell company in the Cayman Islands.
Tuesday afternoon is coming for you.
Is. And it will consume the exact same 60 minutes for a billionaire as it does for a barista.
It is the ultimate inelastic asset. You just can't stretch it.
So the thought experiment from the source text pivots to this. What if time was the default currency of consequence?
Right. Instead of paying $200 or $100,000, you pay in hours.
But wait, let's be very clear about what we mean here, because when people hear paying in time, their brains immediately jump to one thing.
Community service.
Right, community service. And the way we use community service right now is heavily stigmatized.
Oh, completely. It's treated as a concession for poverty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The current system essentially says, oh, you're too broke to pay the $200. Fine, put on this orange reflective vest and go pick up trash on the side of the interstate.
It's an afterthought for the poor.
Okay.
But that is the critical distinction we need to make today.
Right, tell me.
In our current model, time is the punishment for lacking money.
Yes.
But in this thought experiment, time ceases to be the alternative, and it becomes the universal baseline.
For everyone.
Rich, poor, executive, unemployed, everyone pays in hours. You speed, you lose your Saturday morning. You find yourself repairing a local hiking trail or painting a municipal building or, clearing out a drainage ditch that overflows every spring.
Okay, hold on. I have to challenge the core premise here, though.
Let's hear it.
We are treating time as if an hour is a perfectly equal unit of measurement for every single human being.
Sure.
But economically, it absolutely is not.
Sure, I see where you're going.
Think about like a cardiovascular surgeon. If you pull a surgeon out of the operating room for 4 hours on a Tuesday to go clear brush out of a ditch, the economic loss to society and to their patients is just astronomical.
Yes, the literal value of that hour is huge.
Right, compared to taking 4 hours from someone who is, say, currently between jobs. Aren't we just trading a financial inequality for a massive economic inefficiency? Like, are you honestly arguing that a surgeon's time is worth the exact same as a warehouse worker's time?
From a purely economic standpoint, of course not. The gross domestic product generated by the surgeon in those 4 hours completely dwarfs the output of the warehouse worker. But we have to ask ourselves a much deeper question here.
Okay.
What is the actual objective of the justice system? Is the goal of a fine to extract an equivalent unit of economic value from the offender? Because if it is, then the flat fine actually works perfectly. We just charge people their economic worth.
Right.
But if the goal of a justice system is behavioral deterrence, if it is fundamentally designed to enforce the social contract and correct dangerous actions, then the economic valuation of the hour is completely irrelevant.
Oh, I see. You're saying we are measuring the wrong thing entirely right now.
Precisely. A financial fine, no matter how you scale it or adjust it for income, ultimately measures, can you afford this?
Just tests your resources.
Exactly. But a time-based fine measures, did you do this?
Wow. It bypasses your wallet completely.
It bypasses your wallet, and it demands a surrender of your personal autonomy. When the state takes your Tuesday afternoon, it hasn't punished your bank account, and it hasn't punished your accountant.
It has punished your actual physical existence.
Exactly. It forces you to pause your life and pay a physical debt to the community you endangered.
That is a profound shift in thinking. We're basically moving from an extractive model to an experiential one.
Yes, experiential is the perfect word for it.
But here's where this deep dive takes an absolute left turn, because as fascinating as that is, the most amazing part of this proposal isn't even about leveling the playing field of justice.
No, the equality of the punishment is just a byproduct.
Right. The real shockwave of this idea happens when you look at the mechanics of who you are standing next to while you pay that debt.
The focus totally shifts from the penalty itself to the sociological environment the penalty creates.
To understand why a muddy ditch on a Tuesday afternoon could fundamentally alter the fabric of a city, we really need to dive into this massive data dump from 2022.
Oh, the Raj Chetty study.
Yes. A team of economists led by Raj Chetty released a study that just completely shattered how we understand poverty and upward mobility. And the scale of this research is almost impossible to comprehend.
It really is staggering.
They didn't just run a survey or, poll a few thousand people. They mapped 21 billion Facebook friendships.
21 billion edges in a social graph. It is literally the largest sociological data set ever compiled in human history.
They're almost too big to picture.
Yeah. And they securely cross-referenced this unfathomable web of human connection against localized IRS income data and zip codes.
And what were they looking for with all that data?
The objective was basically the holy grail of economics. They wanted to know, what is the single most accurate predictor of whether a child born in the bottom economic quintile will eventually escape poverty and climb the income ladder?
And for decades, sociologists thought they already knew the answer to this.
Oh, yeah. We have poured billions of dollars and endless political capital into a very specific set of levers.
And Chetty's team tested all of them. They looked at the quality of local schools, they looked at family structure, and the prevalence of two-parent households.
They analyzed neighborhood inequality, the Gini coefficient.
They mapped racial segregation. I mean, these are the absolute pillars of every major policy debate in the country right now.
We just operate under the assumption that if you fix the school funding or if you stabilize the family unit, upward mobility will naturally follow.
But the 21 billion data points revealed that those traditional metrics were not the primary engine, were they?
Not even close. The single strongest predictor of economic mobility, beating out school quality, beating out family structure, beating out everything, was a metric they called economic connectedness.
Which I have to say is an incredibly sterile academic term for a very human phenomena.
It really is.
Economic connectedness basically just measures how many of a lower-income child's friends come from a completely different economic class.
It's a measure of cross-class interaction. And the data proved that upward mobility is not just a function of structural resource allocation.
It isn't merely about pumping money into a failing zip code.
Right. Mobility is fundamentally driven by network access. It relies on the strength of informal ties. If you want a child to escape poverty, they need to know people who exist outside of it.
They need exposure to different norms.
They need exposure to different behavioral norms, different educational expectations, and entirely different employment networks. Basically, they need the stranger.
They need the stranger. I love that phrasing. And I want you, the person listening to this, to just audit your own life for a second.
Yeah, think about your own circle.
Think about your text history right now. Think about the last dinner party you hosted or, the people you grab a beer with after work. How many people in your inner circle make 10 times less than you do? Or 10 times more?
If you are being brutally honest with yourself, the answer for almost everyone is 0.
0. We are entirely siloed. We sort ourselves with terrifying efficiency, honestly.
We really do.
We buy homes in neighborhoods perfectly calibrated to our income level. We send our kids to schools populated entirely by families who have similar jobs to us.
The algorithm of modern life has just created these physical echo chambers.
That's exactly it. Just like social media feeds us content we already agree with, our geography feeds us people who already match our tax bracket.
And this siloing effect is what makes Chetty's findings so paradigm-shifting, yet so incredibly difficult to operationalize.
Because if social capital, these cross-class friendships, if that is the literal engine of upward mobility, how do you artificially generate it?
Right. The immediate, naive policy response is usually structural. Planners will say, well, we just need to build mixed-income housing.
Put a low-income apartment complex right next to a wealthy subdivision.
Exactly. Give them the same zip code, and the problem will just solve itself.
But the data destroys that assumption, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you can't just force a connection by changing a mailing address.
Precisely. And this is the most critical nuance in the entire study, and it's one that urban planners get wrong constantly.
What is it?
The data explicitly showed that proximity does not equal connection.
Say that again, because that's huge. Proximity does not equal connection.
Right. Living near a wealthy neighborhood, or attending a well-funded school, or sharing a physical zip code with a diverse economic population did absolutely nothing on its own.
Contact is required, not just co-location.
Contact, exactly.
Let's really unpack that difference because it's massive. Co-location is like living in a mixed-income high-rise, where the investment banker on the penthouse floor rides the exact same elevator as the custodian who lives on the second floor.
Right, they share a physical coordinate in space.
They might nod at each other in the lobby, but they absolutely never speak. That produces 0 economic connectedness.
0. Because co-location is passive. Contact, on the other hand, is active. Contact means genuinely knowing them. It means actual friction-filled human interaction.
But this creates a massive sociological puzzle.
Oh, a huge one.
If you can't just put people in the same room and expect them to become friends, how do you actually forge that bond? You can't legislate friendship.
You cannot force two strangers on a sidewalk to care about each other.
Which is where we have to dig into the psychological mechanics of human bonding. Because it turns out, according to the source material, we've actually known the cheat code for this since the 1950s.
Yes, the 1950s social psychology research.
During the early days of desegregation, social psychologists were desperately trying to figure out how to force hostile, separate groups to interact without it devolving into complete conflict.
And a psychologist named Gordon Allport developed something called the contact hypothesis.
The contact hypothesis.
He discovered that simply mixing groups together often makes biases worse.
Wait, worse?
Yes, worse, unless the interaction occurs under 4 very specific, non-negotiable conditions.
Okay, lay those out for us. What are the 4 conditions?
They are the absolute bedrock of intergroup psychology. If you want to break down an in-group, out-group bias, the environment must contain equal status, a shared task, real cooperation, and institutional backing.
Okay, equal status, a shared task, real cooperation, institutional backing. Let's take those 4 pillars and drop them straight into a muddy drainage ditch on a Tuesday afternoon.
Let's do it.
How does a time-based speeding fine hit those marks?
Well, the first condition, equal status, is arguably the most difficult to achieve in a modern capitalist society.
Because we are so obsessed with hierarchy.
Exactly. When a wealthy person and a working class person interact in the real world, the dynamic is almost universally transactional and hierarchical.
One person's the customer, the other is the server.
One is the client, the other is the contractor. The power dynamic is just deeply entrenched in every interaction.
Right. But when you mandate time as a fine, and you put a corporate attorney and a fast food worker in the same ditch,
the hierarchy evaporates instantly.
It totally does. Because you are both just offenders. You both got caught doing 15 over the limit.
The attorney's law degree doesn't help clear the brush.
And the fast food worker's income level doesn't matter. The mud on your boots is the exact same mud. You have been flattened into complete equals by the state.
Which naturally leads right into the second and third conditions. A shared task and real cooperation.
Because you aren't just like sitting in a circle discussing your feelings.
Which would be incredibly awkward and ineffective.
So ineffective.
Instead, you have a tangible physical objective. The ditch needs to be cleared. And you cannot lift a 200-pound tree branch out of the mud by yourself.
You literally have to look at the stranger next to you and say, hey man, I need your help. Grab that end on 3.
Exactly. The environment forces you to rely on one another. The shared physical exertion bypasses all the usual social anxieties.
You are sweating together. You are frustrated together. You are figuring out a mechanical problem together.
Okay, just 2 people solving a problem.
And what about the 4th condition? Institutional backing. Why is that one so vital?
Because without institutional backing, human beings will always choose comfort over friction.
That is so true. We hate friction.
If this were just a voluntary volunteer group, the moment it got awkward or difficult, people would just walk away. They'd retreat into their comfortable, homogeneous silos.
I would probably walk away, honestly.
Right. But the legal system is enforcing the interaction. The state has mandated that you be there. You cannot leave.
The institution holds the space, basically forcing the interaction to play out until the task is complete.
It is brilliant. A fine served shoulder to shoulder with a stranger hits all 4 of those mid-century psychological conditions purely by accident.
It's amazing. The architecture of the penalty naturally manufactures the exact environment required to generate Raj Chetty's economic connectedness.
It functions as an accidental engine for social cohesion.
You know, it's wild to think about, but we actually have a real-world equivalent of this running right now, and we have for centuries.
Oh, you're talking about jury duty.
Yes. Jury duty.
Ah, yes. Jury duty is the ultimate quiet social experiment.
Nobody thinks of a jury summons as a tool for social engineering, but it really is one of the very last places in American life where the system genuinely does not care about your tax bracket, your algorithm, or your zip code.
It doesn't care at all. You just get summoned.
You could have a neurosurgeon, a forklift driver, a retired teacher, and a college dropout all locked in a stuffy room for 3 days.
And it hits all the markers. The institution forces equal status. Everyone gets exactly 1 vote.
Right. It provides a shared task reaching a verdict.
It requires intense, real cooperation deliberating the evidence. It really is the contact hypothesis in action.
It's a perfect parallel.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind our open exploration mandate today, this also acts as a profound trigger for some tough questions.
Yeah, let's poke some holes in it.
If jury duty creates this environment, and a time-based fine creates this environment, what are the actual psychological limits of this? Can you genuinely engineer social bonds through penal mandates?
It's a fair question.
Think about the underlying emotional state of a person serving a fine. Does the institutional force of a punishment, the inherent resentment of being forced to give up your Tuesday, does that resentful foundation completely taint the interaction?
Right. If I'm furious that I'm losing my afternoon to clear a ditch, am I really going to bond with the person next to me?
Exactly. Or am I going to silently fume, refuse to make eye contact, and just grind out my hours? Can you force a friendship when the catalyst is a penalty?
It's a massive logistical and psychological hurdle. We can't pretend it's a magic wand. But we have to remember, the metric for success here isn't that you walk away as best friends and invite them to your next dinner party.
It's not about becoming blood brothers.
No. The goal, based on Chetty's data, is the destruction of abstraction. It is humanizing the other.
The destruction of abstraction. I like that.
When you spend 4 hours sweating next to someone from a neighborhood you actively avoid, your preconceived notions begin to fracture.
Do you realize they're real people?
You realize that the abstract idea of a poor person or a rich person is actually just a guy named Dave who is also super annoyed he got caught in a speed trap and who actually has a great sense of humor when you're both trying to pry a rock out of the mud.
It breaks the caricature.
It absolutely breaks the caricature.
Okay, assuming we buy into the psychological mechanics of this, assuming we believe that forcing a shared task under equal status can actually generate economic connectedness, why are we specifically targeting traffic offenses?
That's a crucial point to understand.
Why speeding tickets? If this is such a powerful tool, why not apply it to tax fraud or shoplifting or, zoning violations?
Because traffic offenses possess a completely unique demographic profile in our justice system. Speeding is basically the great dragnet of modern society.
How do you mean?
Well, most crimes have a massive socioeconomic skew. White-collar crime skews wealthy, obviously. Property crime often skews lower income. But speeding does not sort by income.
Oh, right, because everyone drives.
The soccer mom in the minivan speeds, the investment banker in the sports car speeds, the college kid in the sedan speeds, the plumber in the work truck speeds.
It's the one thing we all do.
Exactly. It captures a nearly perfect cross-section of the entire population.
That makes total sense.
If you built a social engineering system around shoplifting, you would only capture a very specific, marginalized demographic. You would never reach the executive class.
You'd never get the CEO in the ditch.
Never. But if you build it around speeding, sooner or later, you will catch everyone. It becomes a mechanism to force people who would otherwise go their entire lives without ever interacting with a different class to spend an unstructured afternoon together.
But the implementation has to be utterly ruthless for this to actually work.
I mean, you're absolutely ruthless.
Because the very nature of this idea means you cannot allow for parallel work.
We circle right back to contact versus co-location. This is the first massive pitfall of the whole idea.
Right. If a city implements this, and 10 offenders show up to a local park, and the supervisor just hands them all trash bags and says, all right, spread out and pick up litter for 3 hours.
The entire experiment fails instantly.
Because they just put in their AirPods, zone out, pick up wrappers, and never speak to another human being.
Exactly. That is co-location. The tasks must be physically designed to mandate cooperation.
Like the heavy branch.
Yes. It has to be moving heavy objects, building structures, tasks that literally require communication and synchronized effort.
And the second pitfall, which honestly feels like the biggest threat to this entire concept, is the inevitable attempt by the wealthy to just opt out.
Oh, they will definitely try to opt out.
You absolutely cannot allow these hours to be bought out, deferred, or delegated.
The moment you allow a high-income earner to pay a proxy to serve their hours.
Or the city offers like a premium buyout option where you can just pay $5,000 to skip the ditch.
The entire social architecture collapses. It ceases to be an engine for economic connectedness and immediately reverts to a regressive tax on the poor with added manual labor.
The wealthy buy their way back into their silos, and the working class is left digging the ditch alone.
So it has to be universal, mandatory, and collaborative. It needs to be what you might call slow infrastructure.
Slow civic infrastructure.
Yeah. When we hear the word infrastructure, our minds immediately go to concrete and steel. Bridges, highways, power grids.
Physical systems that connect us geographically.
But this concept is proposing the construction of civic infrastructure. It is a quiet, generational rebuilding of the connective tissue between human beings.
I love that.
It's not a flashy policy you pass to cure poverty overnight. It is an ambient, repeated, unremarkable event happening week after week across millions of people, slowly reweaving the social fabric.
That is a beautiful sociological vision. But let's drag this thought experiment back down to the harsh reality of municipal government for a minute.
The reality check.
Because if you propose this to a city council, they're going to hit you with a massive, pragmatic brick wall, which is revenue.
Yes, the municipal budget argument, it's unavoidable.
Cities collect real, tangible money from traffic fines. If you switch the currency from dollars to hours, millions of dollars just evaporate from city budgets overnight.
Just gone.
How does a mayor justify losing that liquid capital just to run a grand psychological experiment in a drainage ditch?
It is the most common and immediate objection to this idea. But analyzing that objection actually forces us to confront the deeply corrupted nature of municipal fine revenue in the first place.
Tell me more about that.
Yes, cities would lose liquid capital. But for most large municipalities, ticket revenue is actually a relatively small piece of the pie. It's essentially a rounding error.
Okay, but what about small towns?
Right. There are specific towns and municipalities that rely incredibly heavily on this money to fund their daily operations.
The classic speed trap towns. The ones where like 30% of the town budget comes from a single 2-mile stretch of highway.
Exactly. And when a municipality begins to lean on ticket revenue to that degree, it fundamentally corrupts the nature of policing.
The incentives get totally skewed.
The incentive structures become completely warped. Police departments stop pulling people over for the sake of public safety to stop reckless driving, and they begin pulling people over purely as a mechanism for cash generation.
So they are ticketing for revenue, not for safety.
Exactly. The justice system bends sideways and basically becomes a predatory tax collection agency.
So the argument from the text is that losing that specific stream of revenue isn't actually a negative. Starving the beast is a feature, not a bug.
Removing that perverse incentive is arguably a prerequisite for a just society. But furthermore, we have to recognize that the city isn't getting nothing in return.
Right, they are getting something.
When you extract money from a citizen, it's a purely extractive punishment. You are pulling capital out of the local economy. But when you extract time, it becomes a generative punishment.
Because the city gets the labor. The ditch actually gets cleared. The community center gets a new coat of paint. The park gets a newly constructed bench.
You are forcing the offender to physically invest in the upkeep of the community they endangered. You are translating the penalty directly into civic value.
But as we honor the mandate of open exploration here, we really have to look at the massive, uncharted territory this idea represents.
It is entirely uncharted.
Because utopian concepts always sound perfect on a podcast microphone or, in a deep dive like this. But when they collide with the messy reality of human nature, they tend to fracture.
They do. And we are dealing in pure hypotheticals here. This has never been attempted at the scale we are discussing today.
Right. And the logistical nightmares alone are just staggering.
Absolutely staggering.
Think about the bureaucracy required to manage this. Who supervises thousands of reluctant offenders every single weekend?
How do you insure them against injury while they clear a ditch?
Yeah, liability. And going back to the psychology, how do you mathematically measure or enforce real cooperation?
You can't.
If two people are assigned to clear brush and they stubbornly decide to just work on opposite ends of the ditch in total hostile silence, grinding out their hours without exchanging a single syllable, the entire mechanism for social mobility completely fails.
It does.
You cannot legislate a conversation. You cannot mandate a paradigm shift.
That is the ultimate vulnerability. You can build the arena, but you cannot force the gladiators to shake hands.
Right.
And the system could easily buckle under the weight of its own administrative bloat long before anyone makes a new friend.
Which brings me to the toughest question of all, I think. Are we asking too much of a speeding ticket?
I mean, expand on that.
Well, a fine is, at its core, a penalty for a dangerous act. Driving a 2-ton machine at high speeds through a neighborhood where kids are playing is dangerous.
Right.
We want to stop it. That's the primary goal.
Yeah, safety first.
If we take this incredibly simple tool, the traffic ticket, We try to load it up with all these grand, sweeping ambitions.
Yeah.
If we try to turn it into a lever for social mobility and cross-class networking and civic infrastructure rebuilding and the destruction of the Gini coefficient, do we lose the focus on basic traffic safety?
Does it dilute the point?
Yeah, does the punishment become so convoluted, so philosophically heavy that it stops acting as a clear deterrent to the actual crime?
Yeah.
Are we over-engineering a simple system until it just breaks?
It is a profound risk. When you try to solve structural poverty with a traffic stop, you might just end up failing at both.
That's a scary thought.
The gravity of the initial infraction could easily get lost in the sociological experiment. But, and this is where I find myself deeply aligned with the underlying premise of the source text, even if the grand social mobility aspect fails entirely.
Even if nobody speaks.
Even if nobody makes a single friend in that ditch and everyone works in silence, we are still left with one undeniable victory.
Which is what?
We eradicate the fundamental hypocrisy of the current system. We eliminate the distinction between, can you afford this, and did you do this? Right now, a wealthy person and a working-class person commit the exact same dangerous act, and our justice system pretends to judge them equally, while secretly only measuring the depth of their bank accounts.
It's just inherently dishonest.
It is. At the absolute bare minimum, a time-based fine solves that hypocrisy. A loss of autonomy is felt universally. A Tuesday afternoon lost is a Tuesday afternoon lost, regardless of your net worth.
That is a phenomenal place to land this thought experiment. We started this deep dive looking at Anssi Vanjoki, a Nokia executive handing over $103,600 for going a little too fast in Finland back in 2002.
An absurd number.
And from that single absurd number, we have spiraled through the cascading road of a $200 flat fine, the accounting loopholes of proportional justice, the staggering 21 billion data points of Raj Chetty's Facebook friendships,
The mechanics of Gordon Allport's contact hypothesis in the 1950s.
and the concept of slow civic infrastructure.
It is an extraordinary journey from a mundane traffic stop to the literal foundations of how human beings connect with each other.
It really is.
And before we close, I want to offer one final provocative angle on this for you, the listener, to mull over. We've talked a lot about the mechanics of time, but I want to look at the philosophy of time as a natural resource.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Where are you going with this?
Well, in our modern capitalist framework, we treat time as supreme individual property. It is something we own exclusively.
Right. My time is my time.
We either sell it to an employer in exchange for wages, or we hoard it for our own leisure. But what if we fundamentally challenged that ownership model?
How so?
What if a portion of your time inherently belongs to the community the moment you violate its rules?
Oh, wow.
If you damage the social contract by acting recklessly, you shouldn't just be able to pay a financial fee to sweep your mess under the rug. You should have to literally, physically stitch that social contract back together with your own hands alongside the very neighbors you endangered.
That redefines justice entirely.
It stops being a financial transaction with an abstract state and becomes a physical, temporal debt owed directly to your community.
It moves it from extraction to restoration.
It does. It asks us to invest our lives, quite literally, back into the places we live.
I'm going to be chewing on that for a long time. And as we sign off, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final image to carry with you.
A parting thought.
I want you to think about this during your commute tomorrow morning. Imagine an entirely ordinary Tuesday afternoon. For no noble reason whatsoever. Just because you were running late, lost focus, and got caught doing 20 over the limit, you are handed a shovel.
And there you are.
And you find yourself standing in a muddy ditch, shoulder to shoulder with a stranger. Someone whose daily reality looks absolutely nothing like yours. Some of the algorithms of modern life would have ensured you never, ever met.
The stranger.
Look around at the cars next to you on the highway tomorrow and wonder, who might you end up digging a ditch with? We will leave that completely open-ended for you to explore. Until next time, keep diving deep.